Hi, we're talking about Your Money Matters on NDTV Profit, and my name is Alex Matthew. Now, when it comes to the whole suite of products that the government offers, or rather government schemes that are aimed at retirement saving, there are a few that stand out. For the employee, of course, the Employee Provident Fund is a go-to. In fact, a lot of people don't have a choice but to invest as much as they do in the EPF. But there's also the National Pension Scheme. People use that to supplement the investments that they're making towards their retirement, but also it's for people who don't contribute to the EPF that still want a government scheme to invest in. It's already been something that a lot of people gravitated towards, but there are a few changes that allow you now to invest in multiple schemes of the NPS. What am I talking about, and should you avail of this facility? We're going to talk about that on today's episode. Mrin Agarwal, who's a financial educator and founder of Finsafe India, joining me today. Mrin, thanks so much for taking the time. Let me start by asking about the most recent changes, among which is this one, where you can invest in multiple schemes of the NPS.
So, hi Alex, and thanks for having me on the show. And yes, I think there have been some very interesting changes that have come about. The first one, as you mentioned, about the multiple scheme framework, wherein now the investor can hold multiple schemes. So, what used to happen was that there was one common scheme, as it was called. The old scheme still exists, by the way. I think that's the first thing that we need to remember, that the old scheme still exists and it's known as the common scheme. So, earlier you would have one scheme which had only equities in it, or you could choose debt and then you would choose the allocations. But now fund managers have been allowed to launch multiple schemes across different asset classes. And these schemes can be tailored by life stage or by like occupation of the subscriber. And each scheme can be held by the investor, right? So the investor can have the old scheme. They can also have new schemes as well that they want to have. So it's not like they need to hold only one scheme, they can have multiple schemes. And the main thing is that a lot of these schemes that I'm seeing actually seem to be allocating across different asset classes. Even 100% equity is allowed. And they have also been allowed to charge a slightly higher fees at 0.3% versus the 0.1% that was typically charged earlier.
Okay, interesting, because and for people to understand the context, of course, if they don't understand how the common scheme or the old scheme, as you've pointed out, was working, is that you could choose from the automatic allocation, or you could choose to have a higher allocation towards equity, or you could choose to have a higher allocation towards fixed income, depending on what you wanted from the NPS. But you didn't have the option of going 100% equity, did you? And that was something that was a bit of a drawback for a lot of people choosing to invest in the scheme. Was that right?
Yes, possibly.
So between that and this, how do you determine which one is for you? How do you make that choice, Mrin?
I think, Alex, in fact, what I generally see is that most people choose the default option, which is actually the balanced fund, basically the middle one. The moderate auto choice is what typically people end up choosing because they choose the default option. So I think number one, yes, 100% equity is good, but I think there are a couple of things that I would like to actually point out. And one, of course, is that, see, all this while it was very simple. You just decide your equity allocation, or you just do the auto choice if you're not sure about the allocation. Now, it's become like multi-asset funds, and you have to choose from these particular multi-asset funds. So, choosing from that could be difficult. And what happens sometimes, which is what we see in mutual funds, right? That people tend to hold schemes with a lot of overlapping stocks, for example, we're really missing out on the diversification and possibly also on performance. And the other big thing, see, as of now, what was happening is that you're choosing a fund, and in most cases, people will just remain invested, right? I mean, even though you can switch schemes and you can have different PFMs and all of that, all those features were already there. But point is, people were not doing it. And somewhere, I think what I really like about NPS is the simplicity, right? There is one scheme you invest in, you hold it for many, many years. Now, what will happen is that if people are going to start looking at performances, typical investor behavior, right? That they would start churning portfolios. They'll say, oh, this fund has done better than this fund. And, so I think a lot of the wrong behavior that we see in mutual funds, you're actually going to see could possibly happen here, because now you have these multiple different schemes with different asset classes, so like multi-asset funds. And so that is the first question, that do we even actually need a multi-asset fund for retirement, right?
So I have a question for you though. How does it work? If you're investing in the common scheme, then you have a requirement to stay invested till you're 60. And I think for a lot of people that was also a bit of a drawback, to say that I don't necessarily want to work in, or be in employment till I'm 60. What if I have saved enough to allow me to stop doing a regular job when I'm 50? Then I need access to the funds that I have set aside for my retirement. But then the new schemes that are allowed to be invested in have a requirement for what, 15 years, right? So that's more free or flexible for you.
Yeah, I think that certainly is a very big advantage. But I think what people must remember is that the annuity aspect is still going to be there, which I think very soon is going to become 80-20. So currently it's still 60-40, which is 60% you can get as a lump sum and 40% needs to get into a pension plan. And I think there was a proposal to move that to 80-20, which we might see happening very soon from what I was reading. But the fact still remains that, you're not going to get back that 100%, right? And, so of course you need to keep that in mind. But I think overall it's a good move to reduce the period to 15 years, but that's only for the new schemes. It's not for the old scheme.
Is there a quantum that you need to bear in mind, or is there no limit to what you can put in the NPS?
See, what you can invest whatever you want. Of course, from a tax perspective, given that the NPS investment comes as part of Section 80 CCD2 and is eligible as a deduction in the new tax regime, of course, there the limit is 14% of basic, but that applies basically only to corporate employees. But you can still invest more than that if you want to.
This, for corporate employees, you have the option under the new tax regime to have your employer contribute on your behalf, and then you can claim a reduction in your taxable income to that extent. Are you able to invest in the new schemes with that?
Oh, I'm not 100% sure about it, but I guess you should be able to do it.
Interesting. Okay, so that's something to check. So you were making a point about this adding a layer of complexity, but I'm trying to understand whether you can churn. Like, for example, hypothetically, if I were to choose one of the new schemes, and if I were to choose 100% equity option, I'm looking at the scorecard, or I'm looking at the returns over the course of the next 2-3 years. Am I allowed to take from that scheme and switch over to something else without a tax implication? Without, of course, redeeming, because I can't anyway if 15 years are not done?
Yeah, I mean, I guess all those factors would be there, but like, see, right now, when you switch, in the old one, there is no tax implication, right? But, more than anything else, I think, Alex, I think the concern that I really have is the fact that do we actually, when we have mutual funds, right, and we know the difficulties that are there for people to invest in a fund, in the sense to choose a fund, and the other bigger aspect is to remain invested. And I think, we really need this sort of a complexity, right? So
argument for that, the only point taken entirely, behaviorally that's an issue, but the argument for having that is that you have the tax advantage because 60% of whatever you withdraw is tax free. And so that's a huge advantage to have, wouldn't you agree?
I completely agree that there's a huge advantage in getting that amount tax free, and especially now if that amount is going to be increased to 80%, I think that's a great thing that can happen. But at the end of the day, I would still say keep it simple. Have that one equity scheme because we know most people find it very difficult to choose a scheme.
Got it. Now, since we've broached the topic of EPF, I just want to get you to clarify a few things because there were a few changes that were announced with regard to withdrawals, and I think it led to so much confusion. We have some clarity right now. So, what are the changes, and what would you advise in this situation?
So I think the changes are really that one, earlier there were, I think, 13 different rules or categories under which you could do withdrawals, and then each one of them had their own time frame and stuff like that. So now they have been clubbed into three different categories, and basically, the withdrawals have been, I think, basically made easier. And however, I think one of the things that has been said is that there needs to be a 25% that's invested at all times. Even if it's retirement or you've been unemployed, you can only withdraw 75%, and the 25% is still going to be there in the EPF. So again, Alex, my view on EPF again is that a lot of people, and I was looking at some statistics around it, and they said barely, very, very less percentage of people, not able to remember the number, but very less percentage actually remain invested till the end. And most people tend to withdraw it, and which means that you're actually impacting your retirement corpus, because we all know that the last 10 years is when the money is going to compound the most. And that's the period, if you start removing the money and utilizing it for other things, then you're basically impacting your retirement corpus at the end of the day. So
Correct.
I think, again, think about EPF as retirement security. Do the withdrawal only if it
Right.
is really, really, really necessary.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, because you have compounding that works in your favor and your money starts working for you. Mrin, absolute pleasure speaking with you as always. Thanks so much for joining in.
Thank you.
All right, so there you go. You've gotten a sense of what the few new changes to the NPS are and the rules with regard to the withdrawal of your EPF.